The Battlefield series has grown in stature over the last decade as its brand of wide-open modern warfare and large-scale battles grew in popularity through Bad Company 2, Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, but it's difficult to kind of gauge the interest that there is in Battlefield 5 right now. The last game, Battlefield 1, I've said Battlefield a lot already, took a step back to World War 1 and was a big success alongside the futuristic shooters of the day. But between the struggles of Star Wars Battlefront 2 and then the backlash to the inclusion of women in the World War 2 setting from certain corners of the internet, I'm not particularly sure that the hype train has really managed to pick up that much speed for this game. One thing is for certain though, as we sat down to play the newly revealed Devastation of Rotterdam map at Gamescom last week. This game is bloody pretty. Now in fairness, this is running on a very high-spec PC, but whatever console you're playing on, this is going to be a bit of a looker. This map recreates the city in glorious detail and distills many of its key attributes. Personally, I found it rather reminiscent of the Amin map from Battlefield 1, I hope I've pronounced that right, though city fighting will always have its similarities, and there is quite a lot of common ground in a lot of European architecture. The conquest form of this map spreads in an almost semicircle-like fashion around this central little harbour, featuring these small canals that can provide choke points across bridges. Infantry can always dive into the water and find a ladder though, and there's a railway system that straddles the road and provides plenty of verticality to the battles as well. This is in addition to tons of little alleyways and little squares for tighter street-to-street city warfare. Most of it is relatively intact to start with, but one side of the map does feature out a bombed-out building. Presumably this is the devastation that the map name speaks of. But that helps to add a little variety and distinctiveness to the two different sides of the map. Opposing it, you have a very glitzy building that is multi-leveled and a lot of fun to fight through. It plays really well, retaining much of the feel and the pace of Battlefield 1. There were already a lot of automatic weapons in Battlefield 1, as DICE dredged through the most advanced military tech they could find to keep the pacing high of that game, but submachine guns and automatic weapons in general were much more standard in World War II. Meanwhile, the use of abilities and the general pace of play is kept quite high thanks to being able to do things like throw health and ammo kits, or quickly switching to a grenade launcher as a medic to help clear out a window or a building. But I must admit that some of the innovations and changes that DICE are putting into this game are quite easy to forget about and not make use of for someone who is simply picking up to play the game quite quickly. Take the toolbox for example, which is part of the new fortifications and construction mechanic in the game. I was playing as the support character quite a little bit, delighting in the new automated animations for pulling out the bipod when next to cover and laying down reams of suppressing fire. But it took one of my squad mates to remind me that I could actually build some barricades much faster than anybody else on the team could. In the haze of Gamescom, I'd completely forgotten about the ability to do this while in the thick of the action, but once reminded, I quickly started blocking off and fortifying some of the passages leading to one of the main control points on the map. Similarly, it was only late in the game that our squad leader decided to use some of the squad points that we'd accrued to call in an admittedly spectacular V1 rocket and a much less intimidating and actually quite adorable little parachute supply drop, these as part of the squad reinforcement system. But there were other changes that do simply fall into place. DICE are neutering the traditional crutch of spot and mark so that you can't effectively just scan and digitally mark enemies that you don't actually have a line of sight on. Instead, you're now laying down a marker manually, which is generally a yellow highlight to give a general indication of something that you might have spotted or a building that you think is infested with enemies. However, if you do have your crosshairs directly over a tank or an enemy, then you do still get the red mark to identify them as a specific threat. On the whole, it's going to reduce a lot of the spot and mark spam, I feel, and maybe boost a little bit of the defensive play because you can hide a little bit more effectively. The pressure of spawning with less ammo did also push me, when playing as a support, to throw ammo packs at people left, right and centre, while also making sure that I myself topped up at the fixed supply crates when I could. Similarly, the changes to medic class revives mean that they are always on hand for the class, regardless of the loadout, but then the longer animation loop does mean that doling out fresh leases of life has to be a bit more considered. You can't just rush in with your defibs like you used to be able to in Battlefield 4. With squad mates also being able to heal you up, you should still have actually more options for revives, by which I mean more people that can choose to ignore you when you're teamed up with randoms, but the balance still leans towards a much more considered style of play on the whole. As always though, Battlefield 5 is going to be at its best by far when playing with a squad of friends. Dropped into impromptu groups for Gamescom wasn't particularly ideal, and I do actually feel fortunate that I was grouped up with one or two other players that wanted to coordinate and play together. So we were spawning on each other, dashing into buildings together to take out encamped enemies, chatting to each other because, well, we were sat right next to each other, and discussing when and where to call in the squad reinforcements. But I do feel that it's going to be all too easy to lose this kind of conviviality with a different set of players. Obviously, it's still early days for Battlefield 5, we've already had the closed alpha, and this is the prelude to the beta tests coming before the game's launch. DICE still have plenty of opportunities to tweak and tune their game, and maybe amplify certain things, reduce others, and get the balance just about right. On the whole, Battlefield is still Battlefield, but the tweaks and changes that DICE are making to the formula as they attempt to engender more team play and control the flow of the battles are really yet to come to the fore, I feel. Thanks as ever for watching, I hope you've enjoyed this. Please do head over to the6thAxis.com where we've got all of our written content, our features, reviews, previews, news, and before you go, please do like, subscribe and share this video if you have enjoyed it. Hopefully we will see you again soon. Goodbye!
Objective Able is being lost!
We're being attacked! Hold the bloody line!